Welcome to Moving Through and Beyond, a podcast dedicated to sharing inspired journeys of redefining life, vision, and purpose after immense hardship and grief. My goal with this podcast is to give you hope and to let my guest journeys inspire you to make the choice to keep looking up. I'm your host, Carey Conley. Hey, everybody, this is Carey Conley, the host of Moving Through and Beyond podcast. I have this podcast to bring on guests who, throughout their journey in life, have been through some sort of adversity and share their story a little bit and what they went through, but mostly to share with you, the audience, what helped them get through it. So I'm honored to bring on a friend today that we've known each other for quite a while since I moved here, moved to Arizona 8 years ago. And you have your own radio show, Business RadioX. I want to make sure I get that right.
Yeah.
I've been on that show years ago.
It's been a long time.
And been friends, but also have similar stories. But before I go into that, I would like to thank you for being here.
I'm honored. Yeah. I appreciate the invitation.
And just give me a little history on yourself. How did you get to be owning a radio show?
Right. So it's a radio studio and podcast production house, not unlike what we're sitting in here today, which is great. We have 15 business owners, executive leaders, and professional organizations that come to us, and we produce their podcasts. Right. And it's also live radio and put out on LinkedIn as a video as well. So how I landed there was that at the time I was an integrative coach working with a lot of just people who were looking for a better way to live in their own experiences and love life. And as I started having more referrals, I was working with more doctors, attorneys, and some local officials. And the referrals from those specific people weren't coming through as easily as it was everybody else that I was coaching, even though they were the first ones to speed dial me and text or call and say, I finally had that conversation. Thank you so much. Or we just were awarded that $1 million contract. I said exactly what you needed me to say, those kinds of things.
Right.
And then I went to my business coach at the time and I said, well, I don't understand why they're not referring me. I had at the beginning of every relationship in coaching, I would say, when and if I do a great job for you, the greatest gift you can give back to me is to tell other people who are in similar situations that I've been able to help you. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, absolutely, we'll do it. So my coach said, go ask them why they're not referring you because you know you're doing a good job for them. It's clear, it's evident. They're staying with you. They're succeeding.
Right.
And so I did, and at the time there were 4 different clients, and 3 of them said, you're the best kept secret. Why would I want to let anybody know that I have a secret weapon?
Got it.
Yes, it was an ego thing. They were very, very comfortable saying it's an ego thing. And so I'm like, well, then I need to build my business beyond referral only. Because up until then, for probably 8 years, it was all word of mouth referral.
Gotcha.
So I was challenged by my coach to think about a podcast. And I thought, I don't want to do a podcast.
I said that for years too.
Right. I'll run out of ideas. I'll run out of content. I don't like being in front of a camera, all those things. And then I came across Business RadioX. I'm a licensed partner. They've been around for 15 years now, and I've owned my studio for almost 6. And I could just tell that their interviews were different. It wasn't about me, the professional, sharing the wisdom and the tips and those sorts of things. It's what you and I both do so well.
Right. Invite
somebody in, have a conversation and being listening where there is, commonalities and opportunities to really align. Mm-hmm. And that's how Phoenix Business RadioX was born so that I could leverage what I really do on a day-to-day basis, my iNudge coaching and consulting practice.
Yeah. That's interesting because when I first started coaching, about 10 years ago, one of my very first clients came to me because she was wanting to get out of her corporate job. She was going into the network marketing industry, which I have history in, 30 years in that industry. And she was wanting to figure out how to really make it fly and be able to stay home with her girls that were little at the time. And so I was able to help her with that because it was everything that I had done. And so she went on to become a coach, a speaker, an author. But never once did she give me any of the accolades because I'm sure she didn't want people to know. Right. Yeah. So I think that's really interesting that you said that.
Yeah, and how we get to navigate that is all about us. It doesn't say anything about anybody else and what they're doing. We just have to, with humility, decide if there is a pain point. How do I handle that pain point? What does it say about me?
Right.
And then just move forward.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, how'd you get into coaching? Because I think I saw in your bio you had corporate background for a long while.
Yeah, Intel. Also worked for Carey School District for years, was an assistant principal, and then a VP for schools for Pinnacle
Okay.
Education. So I've done a lot of things in a lot of years. Coaching for me started when Grady and Madison, who are now 28 and 26, they were 2 and 4. And I had lived my whole life up until then wanting to not only be an educator, but also a mom. And I read all the great books on parenting, and especially and your daughter just had her second baby a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
I read every parenting book that there was. And I would skip the chapters on postpartum depression because I thought, well, that's not me. That's not going to happen. Like I had a choice. Literally would skip them. Yeah, chapter 9, don't need to read that. Very, very naive. And had really difficult postpartum depression. I can recall nursing my son, who was my firstborn, at night, rocking him, singing a lullaby, and then also having horrific thoughts that would just come through about hurting him. Thankfully, never acted on it.
Right.
It was frightening. It happened 3 times before I had the courage to say something to my sister and my husband, and then I got into the doctor and started getting help. I did medication for a little bit. It felt like a Band-Aid, and so I was not in a happy marriage, and I was just feeling stuck because I'd worked my whole life for this to be my dream life, and I was unhappy and really struggling.
Yeah.
And when I say unhappy, it was more than that. It was chemical imbalance. It was hormones. It was some brain challenges, that sort of thing. And so I went to Changing Hand Bookstore on one day, and I just stood in the aisle, spirituality and personal growth, and I thought, all right, well, something's got to speak to me. And Debbie Ford's book, The Dark Side of the Light Chasers, jumped out at me. It was, you know how books sometimes sit out and you can see the whole face of the book?
Yes.
This one was just the binding, but it was like a neon sign calling me. And I thought, well, okay. And I sat down in the aisle and I read the first 2 pages and I bawled my eyes out in the bookstore.
Yeah.
Enrolled in one of her courses within 2 weeks after having read the book and done all the exercises in it. And that was the catalyst for me saying, 1, I can heal my own life. I can be a co-creator or the sole creator of where I want to go next and how that's going to happen. I can heal my past and still be in love with life. And went on to train a lot of coaches in Debbie Ford's community internationally. We were housed at the time through John F. Kennedy University, and then we became an entity on our own. So I was certified as a shadow coach for years, and I've just had a lot of other trainings and opportunities. When I've felt a need and compelled to learn something like after healing, after my emergency hysterectomy and appendectomy about 7 years ago, a friend from high school reached out and said, you've got to come up to Sedona to the Mago Retreat Center. I'm like, well, what's that? Landed up there, learned how to do tapping and healing and that modality, playing with energy. And, of course, I got certified, and now that's part of my practice. So it's just been this, I think you're the same, this evolution of what I find that works for me. If there's an opportunity for me to share it with other people, then I bring it into the work that I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting as you're sharing this, Karen, because I am feeling the same, like, evolution the word you used, right? Because I believe that everything we go through is preparing us for the next thing.
Always.
And I know your story. I'm going to have you start sharing a little bit about that. Don't you see how everything you went through and learning how to heal yourself and then teaching it to other people was preparing you for what was coming later in life?
Didn't expect to cry because I've gotten through many interviews lately where I
Don't
don't
start
get
because
emotional.
I've already been crying today. So
I'm looking at our producer. Where's our tissue?
Yeah,
So here's what's so phenomenal about that question or that observation. The 4th or 5th night that Mike landed in the hospital, and we'll talk about that in a minute, I woke up in the middle of the night and God, universe, divine, whatever, this voice that came through the ceiling said, you are going to talk about this as it's happening. And I pretty much said...
You did.
No, I said F no.
Yeah.
Like, you can't make me, and this is crazy. And then the next statement was exactly what you said just a second ago. I have prepared you your whole life for this. And I thought, well, that's just a shitty deal. Excuse my language. You've prepared me my whole life to be in love with someone for 15 years and feel like I have a great marriage, only to have to find him on a sofa in his auto shop having shot himself.
Yeah.
and have him survive.
Yeah.
And yet, you and I have always connected well because we both have worn our hearts on our sleeves.
Yes.
We've always led by example, and through the challenges have spoken very candidly about them as we're moving through them. I think that's one of the neatest things about our friendship, in addition to how we show up professionally for other people. So I had already been talking very candidly about postpartum depression and challenges in business and relationships and physical things, that sort of stuff. This seemed too big of an order. It wasn't just my story. It was Mike's story, and I didn't even know if he was going to live. And if he did, were we going to be together, and what all that looked like? Should I just shut it down and crawl in a hole? All that.
Right.
And I didn't. And I, for the last 3 years, have been very candidly speaking about what it was like to try to help him restore, what it was like to lose him to mental health. He's still alive. He survived a gunshot wound through his head, brain surgery, tracheotomy. We brought him home. My 15-year-old and I brought him home a handful of times and tried to kind of re-assimilate, and it just, the wheels were off. Not so much for my son and myself, but for my now ex-husband. And now he and his family have nothing to do with us, and I just have to love him and them from a distance.
I remember watching you go through all this almost in real time, Karen. I mean, you were literally documenting it day by day,
how it was happening.
And so being through what I've been through, obviously most of my audience knows this, but I lost my husband to suicide almost 9 years ago now.
Gosh, it's been that long.
Yeah. And then 3 years later, lost my son to suicide as well. And I just remember watching you thinking, how is she going through this? Because
not well, always.
Well, I was watching you from afar thinking, wow, she has a lot more strength than I ever could. I just don't know what it would be like to bring somebody home knowing where their mental state was at. I would not have been equipped. You were equipped. I would not have been equipped, I don't think.
I wasn't equipped. I loved him and love him so dearly that the mental health component, which I wasn't aware was as big of a deal as it was, was very insignificant. The suicide attempt, or whatever words we're supposed to use for that, right? His desire or the opportunity to try to take his life was so minimal for me, because I understand mental health, my own challenges. Where it was really a struggle was the attachment to addiction and wanting to continue that, the unwillingness to go get the help that's needed so that not only that he could do well and be fully restored, as a family unit we could work through this.
Yeah.
So as I candidly and openly shared as it was happening, that point when I realized this is not going to work, my son, it became a very verbally abusive situation between my son and his dad, which had never been part of the landscape before. And that's when I realized, oh no, I won't sacrifice that.
Right.
And again, the refusal to get the help that was needed, or the inability, right? Because we're talking about addiction, mental health, and now brain injury.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be naive to think that I know what kept him from the opportunity to heal.
Right.
Not for me to decide.
Right.
I knew I needed to be protective of and have a beautiful life with my kiddo and on behalf of our child.
Yeah.
So I did it messy. And the hardest part was when I knew that the marriage wasn't going to work and went ahead and filed for divorce. Right. Because that's not what I wanted.
Yeah.
And I was frustrated and sad.
Yeah, and I know you're equipped to help people through trauma, Karen, so it's interesting to me how you got through that, because that was a lot on your shoulders. So what helped you through that?
Trauma integration work, I would say, would be the number one new thing that I was introduced to, having gone through this. So had I been previously the shadow integration coach, doing a lot of introspective personal growth work and personal development. I mean, really, that's my jam. I love it. I teach it. I live it. One of my Phoenix Business RadioX clients and very dear friends, Kelly Lorenzen. I think you know Kelly. Do you know Kelly with Calum Consulting?
Yeah.
Oh, you two ought to know each other.
Great.
she was with me. And as my clients, men and women alike, would come into the studio, and I would be there to say hello before my producer took care of everything. They'd ask, how are things going? And instantly I'd be in tears. And one day, and they were very gracious and patient with me. Very grateful for my community to hold me up when I was a nutcase for a long time. But Kelly looked at me and she said, I want to pay for an integrative trauma session for you. I've done the work. My family's done the work. I think it would be very helpful. And I said, absolutely. And so Julie Gustafson is who I went to. Incredible woman. And I've since been trained and certified in the same work through the group that she got certified in. And it's all around getting the shock out of our body. If you've ever read The Body Keeps Score, there's several incredible books about somatic work and making sure that when we experience trauma, to whatever degree it is, and that's very important, there is no distinction in our body as to my trauma is more serious than yours. It gets fed in, we go into fight, flight, or freeze mode, and until we can clear that shock out of our body, that's where we are informed for all of our decisions moving forward.
Interesting.
And so so I went, my son went, and they were hour-long sessions, and I think the third session I got done, and I looked at Julie and I said, so I need to learn how to do this. It's so similar to the work that I've already been doing through shadow integration work. It's just like another little piece of the puzzle. And she said, I knew that the moment you walked in. Kelly kind of gave me a preview that you'd probably want to do this. And so I went and got certified. So that was the newest thing. So if somebody, I think maybe the suggestion is, if somebody is stuck, whether it's financially or in a relationship or the lack of a relationship or in their career or physically, wherever we're stuck, it's likely that there's something in your psyche and in your bones, in your body that's holding you back.
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yeah, and there are tons of different, which is why you do the show, right? There's so many different ways that we can hold on to hope and we can heal. I've done tons of things: yoga, meditation, nootropics, brain therapy. I've done
reading.
I do so many, and I have to do them consistently.
Yes.
Or I am, working on the edge and about to fall off. So I have to be there.
Every day.
I have to eat clean. I just stopped. I was never been a big drinker, and I just stopped drinking in August. That's been a huge shift for me too, even though I was very social and didn't drink very often. You have to find what works for you.
Right.
And keep finding those things.
This is so, because of my history and what I've been through now, like I said, this has almost been 9 years, 2 suicides. I am just now starting to learn about how the shock gets in your bones.
Isn't that
This
fascinating?
is just something that within the past year, I started about this time last year really diving deep into what was going on inside my head, and took some time off to really work on that, which is not fun, I have to tell you.
Especially for someone like you.
Right.
Who's go, go, go,
And
go,
I
go.
like that.
Yeah. And so to have to stall.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I found out a whole lot of things. So I started following Dr. Joe Dispenza, who I'm sure you're familiar with, and listening to a book. The name is going to escape me.
His book?
I'll come back to it. It's about changing who you are, totally letting go of who you are. And so I'm finding this whole conversation very fascinating because I'm just now becoming aware of how much the trauma really does rule your life. And all of, like you said, all the decisions, the thoughts that you have. It's deep work.
It is deep work. And I always say to folks, we can change our thinking to a degree, and really we have that potential, the growth mindset and the way that we talk to ourselves and think about ourselves and others really helps us move forward or keeps us stuck. And at the same time, we're not just a brain and a thinking mind.
Right.
We actually have 3 brains in our body, right? We have our heart, we have our brain, and we have our gut. And so the Tao healing work that I do helps people get re-engaged with their gut as a source of warmth and energy. And if you know anything about chakras, right, the energy has to move up from that place. So safety and security is that first chakra. Next up from that is creativity. Over that is power, right, self-power and just the knowing. And then our heart, and moving on up from there from the 7 chakras. And if we're blocked anywhere below that heart or our thinking mind, we've got to clear that. So again, many different ways to do it.
Interesting.
and our body keeps score. And I'm going to forget the author's name. That is the name of the book. And it's kind of a heavy read, but it's such an excellent read, more from the scientific, medical side of what we're talking about, in addition to where divinity and soul and all that comes in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Joe Dispenza, great work.
Yeah, I think it's stopping the habit of being yourself. It's something like that.
He's
it's
got
a really
so
good book.
many great books and podcasts
yes.
and now workshops. It's
Yes.
incredible.
Yeah, we
well,
should
good
go on a retreat together.
Done.
Okay, done. We're going to be accountable to that.
Yes,
So
I would love that.
This is.
Do you know Natalie Eckable? She just she's one of my guides. I use her a lot for things when I'm like, hey, what's showing up here? And she does some great work. So she and her husband just got done with a Joe Dispenza, I think like a week and a half somewhere. She said it was mind-blowing.
All right, Joe, we're coming at you.
Yes.
I want to just spend a few minutes talking about your son.
Yeah.
And, because I think above everything else, not only healing yourself. Jeez. Yeah.
So Ivan is 15. So he would have been 12. I have 2 older kids, 26 and 28 from a prior marriage, and they were already out of the house when all this went down.
Right.
I don't know what you want me to say or talk about him.
What I want to touch on is that this is, not only traumatic for you and I, but I can't even imagine for him. And what a blessing to have you as his mom to help him get through this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
He doesn't always feel that way.
Yeah. Well,
I
get that.
He is 15. Let's see. He is so incredible, and he's just a typical 15-year-old. Mm-hmm. And he can be a real jerk sometimes. Mm. And so can I. Mm. We apologize. We admit when we have been crappy with each other. Mm. We laugh a lot. Mm. And he is my teacher. So I had fallen in love recently and was dating who's somebody who's become a very good friend of mine for 4 months leading into the holiday. And I think it was the day after Christmas. I don't know. It was traumatic. He broke up with me. Mm. And I was in such anguish, Carey. And I, after a couple of days of really sitting in it, the pause that you just described, like I just have to be with this and I have to feel every bit of it. And where am I responsible? And I did a little bit of clamoring. Yeah. Why not? And then I quickly realized, well, that's not going to work. Mm-hmm. I had to re-fall in love with myself again and leave myself open to love. And Ivan, my son, he was off for the holiday break. And he was so great about just literally hugging me while I'm bawling my eyes out, not really saying anything other than, Mom, you'll get over this. Yeah. And you'll find the right person. And it was beautiful. And he's shown up for me that way a lot. If I get a bad situation at work that's frustrating with an employee or something that doesn't go right with a client, and I'll mention it to him on the way home from school, he'll be like, you can handle this. Like, it's just like, And so I feel like there's a possibility that down the road he's going to have to deal with whatever layers of this onion is. And he's also asked for counseling and trauma work when he's needed it, related to his dad and unrelated, because now it's just he and I. And he knows that the family and his dad want nothing to do with us. Yeah. And for a while there, they were putting the burden on him, my then 12 to 13-year-old, to take care of everybody and be the one to stay in touch. And I'm like, oh, no.
Yeah, I was wondering about that too.
Yeah. And so will there be a need for some form of therapy and help down the road? I think yes, for all of us. And I also really do acknowledge, and I appreciate your acknowledgement, that we've been doing it all along, and he sees the value in taking good care of himself. My daughter for Christmas got me a gift to go do some breath work and a cold plunge and the hot therapy and all that. And Ivan and Madison came with me. And it really wasn't really his cup of tea, but he did it. And afterwards we got to talk about like what showed up for you and what challenges do you feel like you broke through. So he's as much of a 15-year-old freshman baseball player, wrestler, great kid academically as well. And he's learning how to go inside and find out, like, what do I need? How do I take good care of myself? How do I be my own best friend?
Right.
Sometimes reluctantly, but you don't really have a choice when you hang out with me.
Well, again, a blessing that you all were put
Yeah.
together,
Thank
right?
you. Yes.
And I agree with you. As he evolves into a man, it's probably going to be a whole different set of relationships, different relationships he's going to have to learn how to maneuver through.
Yeah.
I'm thinking,
Well, and so choosing a career, doing
Right.
well in a career, moving to maybe a different state, all of those life pivots,
Yep.
if we are not standing in the present moment, and we don't know that until we know that, but when life hits us, if we can't deal well with life and the challenges, then we really, really do need to seek help, whatever way it is, to be able to say what's happened in my past that might still be running the program, and how can I change it?
Right.
And I know that he knows that he has those resources available, and we'll just see when it needs to show up, or maybe he'll be really well equipped to handle it. But I always think the professional help is really a great way to go.
I agree. Especially with our kiddos right now.
Oh my gosh.
I am so passionate about the kids that some things have started just aligning organically with some organizations that are going into the schools and teaching kids about vision and purpose and why they matter, which I'm thrilled about. I'm super excited about that.
Here in Arizona and other locations?
This organization is actually based out of California. When I know more about it, I will start talking more about it too.
Come to Phoenix Business RadioX and share your story. Again.
Well, I have just been so honored to know you and to watch you,
Thank
Karen. Without you knowing it, you've been so inspiring to me, and it's been super cool to watch all the fun things you're doing now.
Crazy, silly stuff, jumping out of
Fun
airplanes,
stuff, dancing,
dance
contests. I just think it's super important that we just keep telling our story, even though sometimes, like a client you mentioned me not wanting to tell the story
for 30 years.
Yeah, and I get that because there are days I just want to say, you know what, I just don't want to be this anymore. I don't want to be this story anymore.
And there's a difference between sharing the story as a catalyst to help others and staying stuck in and mired in, this is my identity.
Yes.
That's
and
really
I do
important.
see the difference, So much great stuff.
Yeah.
If anybody right now is going through what you've been through, living with somebody that you know has some mental health problems or whatever, what would be the one big piece of advice you would give?
You are the only person that you are responsible for. And I know that's very counterintuitive to a lot of what we say during Mental Health Week or Suicidal Awareness. We're always like, look out for the other guy and call me if you need me. That is all well and true. And yet Mike showed up as a beacon of strength, mentally, emotionally, everything. And so I didn't see the crack in the fiber. I'm grateful that I had always been taking care of myself really well so that I could handle what was about to happen for the next almost 3 years.
Right.
So yes, be there for other people. Also, take a look inside yourself. What is reflecting back to you in the other people's struggle? Go take care of that for you. And through that, you can model what it's like to heal and be whole and hopefully be a light for other people.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that, because you and I'm sure you get this as much as I do. I have so many people reach out to me telling me they have somebody in their life in distress. I literally had somebody book a call on my calendar on Monday. I did not know this woman very well, and she brought her son on with her, and he's struggling. And I thought, okay, what do I say? So, and I told him, in effect, similarly to something that you were saying, is that he needed to figure out what was right for him and go seek that. And it's not easy in this world for our young adults to do that because so much pressure has been put on them to follow the mold.
And they're in trauma. Thank you, COVID. And our economy.
Yeah.
We are all in crisis right now. So you don't know you're in it until you start to realize I'm uncomfortable being uncomfortable. And if you don't have the family or the resources, then how do you know to get help? So how great that his mom reached out and said he needs help.
I told her that. It's just a hard thing, right? We want to help so much, but I think it's important that what you just said, that we have to just take responsibility for ourselves first. And people have asked me, what are the signs? What are the signs? What do I look for? And I wish so much I could answer that question. And I've told everybody, I can't give you a checklist. It's just a unique situation for every single time, in every single time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you and I both have experienced it, you twice.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why we have to take care of ourselves.
Right.
I can only take care of myself before I can help anybody else. And if I'm trying to help everybody else and I'm not doing the work myself, we're out of alignment, which is, I think, part of what's happening for us as a society. We're paying attention to some leaders who are not healthy emotionally, mentally, physically,
Right.
soulfully.
Right.
So no wonder we're all kind of scrambling.
Yeah. I think we just all want to help our kiddos so much, and we're just living in a crazy world right now for them.
I'm so grateful that you're doing that work, having been an educator for years and seeing what I see with my friends who are still in education, and they've never seen anything like, regardless of age, all the way from pre-K on up through college. We need people like you in the schools helping people find their way to really their inner self.
Well, I pray every day I said the right things. I got off that call going, oh, I hope I helped them.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm sure you did.
I appreciate all the work you're doing as well. And
We've got a trip ahead.
Yeah.
You heard it here. We're taking a trip.
Yeah, there's a reason you're in this room today.
Sure.
For sure. Tell everybody where they can find your radio show.
So phoenixbusinessradiox.com is where we're at. If you are a business owner or an executive leader of a professional organization, we'd love to have a conversation with you, not only about being a guest, which is a complimentary opportunity, but also how you can use podcasting as a wreath on your door to get in front of the right people, some of those hard-to-reach people. And then just connect with me on social media, LinkedIn. I spend the least amount of time on. Probably ought to fix that in 2023. Also on Facebook and Instagram, which is more on the personal growth side of things.
Well, I appreciate you being here today.
Love you.
I love this conversation. Could talk to you forever.
Likewise, we're going to keep doing it.
Yep. Thanks, everybody, for listening to this episode of Moving Through and Beyond. I'm your host, Carey Conley, and I'm just here to remind you to keep looking up. If you found this episode inspiring or helpful, please share it with a friend or a family member. In order to be successful on this mission, I can't do it alone. Connect with me at www.careyconley.com, and don't forget to sign up for my weekly Do It On Purpose newsletter. Let's build this life-giving vision movement together to end this epidemic, save lives, and create purpose.